the units of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade destroyed 20 units of armored vehicles of the 4th Tank Division of Russia. A video of the destruction of Russian equipment was published by the brigade's press service. The destruction of the Russian Tank Division's equipment took place from January 8th to 9th, 2025, when the enemy attempted to attack the positions of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade in the Kharkiv region. Due to the high-quality preparation for repelling the assault, the enemy's vehicles were hit by an anti-tank complex before they even approached the brigade's positions. After the vehicles left the road, they began to explode on pre-installed mines, which significantly delayed the advance of the armored vehicles and allowed FPV drone operators to begin destroying the remains of the vehicles. During the first assault attempt, the enemy was forced to retreat to regroup and reinforce. A second attempt at the assault was made by an armored group from 4 directions, with a similar outcome. First, the vehicles were hit by an anti-tank missile, followed by the destruction of the vehicles using FPV drones, artillery, mortars, and other weapons. After the vehicles left the road, they began to explode on pre-installed mines, which significantly delayed the advance of the armored vehicles and allowed FPV drone operators to begin destroying the remains of the vehicles. During the first assault attempt, the enemy was forced to retreat to regroup and reinforce. A second attempt at the assault was made by an armored group from 4 directions, with a similar outcome. First, the vehicles were hit by an anti-tank missile, followed by the destruction of the vehicles using FPV drones, artillery, mortars, and other weapons. A solitary Russian tank rolling toward Ukrainian lines in what one Ukrainian drone group called a very unfortunate suicide belies the perilous state of the Russian army as Russia's wider war on Ukraine grinds toward its 4th year. There are so many Ukrainian drones everywhere all the time along the 800-mile front line in Ukraine and Western Russia that Russian armored vehicles can't leave concealment without drawing the drones' lethal attention. Where the Russians are gaining ground, and to be clear, they are gaining ground, they're mostly doing so on foot and suffering staggering losses. On or just before Tuesday, a lonely Russian tank traveled along a dirt road toward the line of contact outside the village of Kurdyumivka, 3 miles north of the ruins of Toretsk in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk Oblast. Russian field armies are besieging the city of Pokrovsk, just south of Kurdyumivka, and also besieging the city of Chasiv Yar, north of Kurdyumivka. It's unclear which siege the up-armored tank was supporting. In any event, the solitary vehicle didn't get very far. The fate of this piece of iron was obvious, the Ukrainian Phoenix drone group reported. Our guys took it apart to the last detail. The sheer number of drones that harried the tank speaks to the abundance of tiny flying robots over the front line. 4 explosive first-person view drones chased down and struck the tank, eventually immobilizing it. A 5th drone, a heavier bomber model, dropped grenades on the stranded tank to finally destroy it. It's unclear whether any of the 3 or 4 Russian crew survived. It's hard to say why the crew, or, more to the point, the crew's commander believed a single tank could cross open terrain in broad daylight within easy reach of Ukraine's drones. One Russian blogger derisively described Russian tank commanders who continue to order mechanized attacks as geniuses. In sending vehicles and their crews on pointless banzai attacks across the drone-patrolled no-man's land, the tank commanders gain nothing, lose everything, and provide uplifting content for the armed forces of Ukraine, the blogger wrote. Sure enough, the summary destruction of that lonely Russian tank became fodder for the Phoenix drone group's social media team. That the Russians can't safely deploy tanks anymore doesn't mean they can't continue advancing toward Pokrovsk and Chasiv Yar. It does mean they'll probably keep attacking on foot and paying in blood for every yard they capture. according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. At least 30,000 Russian troops have been killed and wounded, trying and mostly failing to eject 20,000 Ukrainian troops from the 250 square mile salient the Ukrainians carved out of western Russia's Kursk Oblast back in August. That's a 50% casualty rate for the Russian North Korean force in Kursk, which may have peaked at 60,000 personnel. The Ukrainians are taking casualties too, of course, and struggling to keep their frontline brigades fully manned. But Ukrainian losses are much lighter. Despite the shocking bloodshed, the Russian army in Ukraine has slowly grown in size to a new high of at least 600,000 troops, according to Zelensky. That's up from just 400,000 or so 2 years ago. Around 800,000 Ukrainian troops oppose them, but the Ukrainians must garrison the entire country, whereas the Russians are concentrated in Kursk and Donetsk, giving the Russians a 3-to-1 advantage, or greater, in many of the most important sectors. There are obvious cracks in the Kremlin's manpower system. It's not for no reason that, last fall, the Russian field army in Kursk welcomed an entire North Korean army corps with 12,000 troops. But for now, the Kremlin still has enough troops and the will to trade their lives for small but steady gains in eastern Ukraine. What the Kremlin doesn't have is a lot of tanks, or any means of using them to meaningful effect on a battlefield humming with drones.